The new season of Mandalorian is out, and with it, the child, which I'm going to refer to as Baby Yoda so I don't have to click that button on YouTube. But if you were thinking about just painting his cheeks pink and throwing some cotton on his head, don't do it. Watch this video first. This is your Geek Fix. So at the beginning of the year, I ran across a pre-order for the Animatronic Baby Yoda. And I wasn't sure I wanted to get it. I mean, I like the show, I love the character, I just wasn't sure about the price. And then of course there was this pop-up that said if I applied for their credit card, that they'd give it to me for free. So I applied for the credit card, and immediately upon receiving it, canceled it. I will say this though, it was made of titanium or something. It was near impossible to destroy. But regardless, it ended up arriving early the same week that the new season of Mandalorian began. My youngest, upon seeing it, immediately wanted it, and to keep her away from it, I ended up going to the Dollar General where I bought this one, which looks almost identical, and it makes noises, but it doesn't move. So that worked out pretty good. I think I got that for about $10. And then I also, while I was there, saw this one, which is, I think, full size. In fact, it looks like it would be great if you want to make a puppet that was pretty accurate in its size. This would probably be the right one to get. Also, because he doesn't make any noises or move, is $10. These two are made by Hasbro. This one's made by Mattel. So if you want to get one of these, it's pretty affordable to have something that you could technically display. But they're not movie accurate. I mean, if you wanted them to be more movie accurate, they need some additional paint. And of course the hair too. We want to figure out a good way to do the hair. But I can already foresee that people are going to start doing some things that would be a big mistake in advance. So of course I had to do a video, and not just an opening. I wanted to make it look a little bit more screen accurate. So first, let's open these up. So I've actually got, stand up! Stand up! So there's, both of these are open now. I don't know if you can see any difference between them. I was right there, about the same exact size. Actually, the one on this side, this is just the doll that isn't animatronic, and it's actually just slightly bigger. I also noticed that the feet are different. This one has 2 individual feet, but of course it doesn't stand up very well. And then this one over here is a little bit more stable, but doesn't really have individual feet. It has a whole base with some electronics there. So he's also generally kind of posable on the right arm. I think he's not really animated on that side, so you can kind of do different things with him, like have him hold the pendant that came with him. But this is about all that he came with. He did come with the pendant, which is really cool, and I'll have to upgrade that as well. But the other one, the doll, the benefit to having them both is the doll also comes with his bowl, and it comes with this frog character. So we have a few more accessories that way. Now there is a switch on the back of the animatronic figure, which has an on, off, and a try, which it was in the try me mode before, so it only did 2 things. In this mode, and I haven't gotten to try this yet, when you lay it down, it's supposed to fall asleep. Oops, go to sleep! There it goes. Aw, isn't that nice? Which is kind of neat. Its eyes are closed and things. The reason why I'm needing this mode, and I'm hoping that if I switch it off while he's laying in that mode, that yep, he'll stay like that. So I can keep his eyes closed for while I'm doing my paint job. So that works out pretty well too. So his eyelids will close all the way, and I can keep them closed, and then I can turn them back on when I'm done to wake him back up, I believe. Will you wake up? Hey. Hey. Oh, there he goes. He's awake. Aww. Isn't that nice? This one's kind of cool because he's about the right size. I mean, I think he's actually movie accurate size. He has, I like also the way that his cheeks come down a little bit more. I think the head looks a little bit more like it does in the movie to me, so I like this one quite a lot. But there's nothing on the bottom. It's just like a beanbag thing, but it stands up pretty good, and it has a good weight to it. If you wanted to make a puppet, I think this would be perfect to do that. So there's that one. So with all of our characters open, it's now time for the next step. So sometimes the best way to approach a project is by starting with the smallest item first. And so that way I can see success that kind of drives me forward. So I'm going to start with the Mythosaur skull and work my way up from there. And it does pull apart in the center, but then what you have to do is untie these strings inside, at least on one side, and then pull that through, so I can save that. And what I'm going to be using today, which is somewhat exciting because people have asked me for, how come you don't use this? And the reason is because I always had other ways to do some of the things I was doing. But I do like it, and that is Rub and Buff. Rub and Buff comes in multiple colors. It comes, the colors that I currently have are this ebony color, I have an antique gold, I have a gold leaf, and then I've also got a silver leaf that I can use. And I'm going to be using mostly just my ebony and my silver leaf. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with a brush using my ebony. I'm going to be using that for some of the dark areas. This will fill in spots pretty good, so it's going to give me some of the detail that I'm wanting. I'm going to come back and bring back that silver color with my other Rub and Buff here in a second. And then I just want to wipe it off or buff it. There's not too many products out there that have all the directions contained in their name. That almost looks good just by itself, actually. Now I'm just going to go back and I'm going to put in my highlights kind of here and there, and not a lot though. Yeah, that isn't bad at all, right? So there you go. So with my confidence now up, I think that we're ready to move on to the figures, but first we're going to need a few things. I have some reference photos here that I plan to reference, but at the same time, so far the things that I'm seeing are a little tricky. Often when you have a prop, the benefit of doing screenshots or referencing the actual object from the film is that you can try and look for little details and then try to make your prop look more like those details. The problem with this little figure is that in the show, there's actually multiple. I can't remember how many I heard they actually have. I want to say 12, but maybe it's not. They have one that can walk. They can have one that's for close-up shots. They have one that puppets in one way or another one that puppets in another one. And they have one for that reflects light from behind a little bit better. And that means that if you're trying to reference all of those and make yours look like all of them, it's going to be slightly difficult. Well, for example, his ears aren't translucent like the one that's in some of the shots in the show. And so that means that light's can be reflected differently. His head might be different for the stunt prop than it is for the hero prop. I guess you could call it a hero prop whenever the Mandalorian's handling him. The thing I can say is that what most people are probably tempted to do with him is just add some pink to the cheeks, throw some cotton on his head, and then add some pink inside the ears. And those are not correct colors, paint jobs, textures, and won't last very long, I don't think. So for that reason, I'm going to try some different things. Some things I'm going to experiment with also on my other doll right here and see how well they work before I go doing them on this more expensive one. And of course, I'll make the mistakes for you, so if you're planning on only doing it on this, you're going to be a little bit safer. But first, it looks like his outfit on the animatronic actually comes off. And so, that's pretty great. Just like that. And also with the doll, it looks like... You could do that. Might have to turn them off while I do some of these things. It's starting to feel a little bit creepy. So I could even probably swap those out if I really liked one above the other. So there's what they look like without their coats on. I think I'm still gonna probably tape them off a little bit. Alright. Boy, that's a pretty rando job. Okay, so we're going to be using a variety of media to touch him up, and that includes everything from paints to pastel pencils to different types of oil and chalks and crayons. But the truth be told, I mean, you could be pretty inventive on this. It's just about getting some of the colors right. And of course, we're going to be able to play around with that and test it. How do you pick your colors? How do you know what color to do? Because I can tell you, just by looking at something, you're not going to be able to tell all the colors that are there, especially when it comes to skin, flesh. So for example, human faces. One thing that's hard to tell is that our faces actually have, no matter what color skin you have colors that you can't see in them. For example, green. Your face has green in it. Is that strange? You don't see it. Or at least you don't think you do, but it's there. So when you're trying to paint a portrait, that's got to be a color that's kind of underlying. It's something that's beneath. So I did a screen capture of the child, and this is the color palette that I came up with. One way that you could go is you come up with a set of colors like this, and you pick out the color that you know that the thing actually is, and then we're going to select and use at least 2 to 3 colors off to each side as well to do some of our shading and some of our highlights. If you look closely, the color of our child isn't just a light green, it's actually this color. It's more of a kind of an aqua green slash blue. My pencils don't actually have any name on them, but that's the color that this is. So I'm going to be using that color to color in some of these lines that I know I can see here in my picture. It's always good to have a good reference picture that you get from a screen capture or from online. Having a few references, I have a couple of the sides of his head and the top of his head, and I'm just coloring in wherever I see lines on his head or I see some shading, and I'm also putting it where I know there should be some shading. So as I go back further in the head here, I know that these lines are supposed to go back farther and that we have some that go off to the sides. It doesn't matter if it looks a little bit strange right now. I know it doesn't look quite right. That's okay. All that we want is just for that color to technically be there. Because the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to wipe it off. And so we're going to go in, and I'm just going to not necessarily wipe it off to the point of getting rid of it, but I want it to kind of blend in as much as I can. And then I move on to my next color. So there's also some yellows that are in there, and there are some, more importantly, pinks. I'll take all those colors and I'm just going to repeat my process. So I add some shade and then I wipe it off. I add some highlights and I wipe it off. And just keep repeating that process until you get an effect that you like. Now I know it's going to look a little bit shiny at first, but that's going to go away when we do one of our other treatments here. So the other thing that I want to use is a really, really light pink that I'm going to be putting in around the eyes. I've actually got 3 or 4 shades of pink, from almost a red to more of a purplish pink and then a pink. And I'm just kind of randomly putting them on in different areas where I feel like it needs to be. I did find out the eyes don't have actual eyelids that are rolling over. The deal is that the eyeballs are actually what's rolling backwards, so you can pull the eyes back to the area that you want, so you can get the bottom of those eyes and put in the exact colors that you're looking for. You want it more reds, kind of where the eye meets the eyelid. The issue that I said earlier about the fact that you don't want to just start painting his cheeks red or pink is that some people might think that they're just rosy, that he's blushing. But the fact is that upon inspection of the pictures, and kind of based on what we see in the movie too, those cheeks are teething cheeks, or teething rash, or drool rash, however you want to call it. So that's the thing, it's an actual rash. So they're not just kind of blushing, they are actually rashes. And so we're wanting to make that kind of a bumpy, inconsistent pink color. So there's some reds in there, there's some pinks, and then there's also some white. So they're kind of crusty and they're kind of, I don't know, bumpy. And that's the effect that I'm trying to get. So I also want that pink rash to go up his cheeks and then onto his nose. So we got a little pink nose that goes up into the bridge a little bit, and then of course a little bit down the lip area. So one common mistake when people look at this figure, they assume that his ears are just pink on the inside, and they're not. Not only are they just not pink, but they have several other colors that you might not assume would be there. For example, some yellows and some oranges and some purples. Essentially, they're the same kind of colors I'd be using for a sunset. And I'm going to be painting that sunset in his ear. So in this case, I started out with some oil pastels with a bit of a yellow look and then transitioned to a yellowish orangish look and just filled up the ear with that. Now I'm using some oils to prevent that rubber from drying out in the same way that some paints would. Then I'm going to use a pink and start at the top and work my way down to about halfway. Last I'll use this purple tone at the top, blend it together and smooth it out. Once I get everything basically where I want it, I'm going to use this matte finish to seal in my work. Now even with that matte finish, it's going to look a little bit shiny. So I've got another step to get rid of some of that shininess, plus add another skin-like layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some pastel and chalk powder and just dust that over the figure and use a sock to wipe it off. So the color looks right, but there's still one very important detail left. So next I want to put on the hair, and I know that the first thing people are thinking is cotton. Because naturally, on the show, it looks wispy, it looks very thin, it looks kind of like cotton that's been pulled out. But it's not. It is actually hair, real hair, that's been punched in. So they take this very fine needle and they kind of push it through. And it's a great process. It would work really well, and I do it myself, but unlike the ears, this is hard plastic, and so that's not going to work. Now, when you can't punch hair, another way to do it is you use some type of gum or glue, and you would push the hair up against it as tight as you can, and then when it's sticking, which it would do very quickly, then you would go back and trim it. And that could work. In fact, if you look at this, these brushes that I have are exactly the right color, and look how wispy that is. So I decided I could glue these on, and no, it's not going to be painstaking, because the problem is if you're taking a lot of time on this, probably you're putting on too much hair. He doesn't have that much hair. It's an angle thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to really work that brush hard and bend some of those bristles, and then what I'm planning to do is I'm going to take some of these hairs and put them into some of this Gorilla Glue, and then I am going to, using tweezers, put them on his head, but I'm going to space them out so there's not going to be a lot of them going around. And the main reason is because I just want to kind of create a little bit of a hairline and some hairs in some different areas. And then to get a little bit more of that wispy look, I'm actually going to combine it with something else. The problem with cotton, if you've ever made a project in school where you had to glue something on that was cotton, you probably saw that eventually it all pulls off and the only thing that's left there is some glue with some kind of white flat stuff on it. Or it eventually mats down, because cotton is that way. It can rebind as you press down on it, and that's a problem because you might glue some cotton on there and it might look okay for a little while, but eventually it'll wear off very quickly. I mean, just the wind blowing will do that. And then also we have to touch the top of the head all the time, so I'm not going to be able to do that if I use cotton. But I can use something like this. This is polyfill. You can buy it at the store, or you can do like what I did and pull some out of your couch. So as you can see, if I pull a little bit off, it does get where I can see the individual strands. And then I could put that on amongst my hairs. But the thing about this stuff is if I try to bat it down, it fluffs back up. It doesn't bind like the cotton does. So that makes this a much better material for being able to kind of balance out the head and give it kind of that fluffy look like new growing hairs amongst the other longer hairs. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just take bits of this, and I used very, very little glue that I put on his head, and linking it into some of the hair, I'm putting very, very little. I mean, again, the key is that as you see the head from front to back, there's several hairs that you're seeing all together. So it looks like there's quite a few, but the truth is it won't take very much dispersing it from front to back, side to side, to make it look just about right. So it's something I can continue to kind of tweak, but he's looking pretty good. I'm going to turn him back on now. I think he's ready for display. If you like this video, click that like button, comment below, and also join our community by clicking that subscribe button. Click that reminder bell and select all if you want to know when our new videos come out. Be sure and check out some of our other videos, including our interview with Dan Lanigan, where we'll be talking about everything from famous hats to proton packs. But in the meantime, this was your Geek Fix.